Welcome to the Politics Chicks podcast. I'm Monica Healy.
And I'm Christy Branham.
This is our second episode, so thanks for tuning in again. Like our friends at the Daily Beans, you'll get some news with some fucking swearing because what the cluck is even happening here? Our What the Cluck segment features news or people that make you say, what the cluck? We'll be covering the newest policies of this tyrannical regime, including sending the military to LA against the wishes of local and state leadership. But we'll also have some hope in the hen house, reasons to keep you hoping, which we all really need right now. This isn't about sound bites. It's about making space for real talk, real people, and a little bit of laughter along the way.
Awesome. Monica, how
Good
have
to
you
see you.
been? Good to see you. How have you been? You have been globetrotting.
Well, here I am in all my sleep deprived and jet lagged glory, and with a different background because I'm back in Minnesota, at least for the time being. So I'm in Scott's basement office, and it's a little chilly down here. And yeah, spent 10 days in London and Ireland and drove on the left side of the road, and there were lots of expletives coming out of my mouth then. We learned that when Scott drives in Scotland and Ireland, his exclamation is Jesus. But my exclamation is, oh shit, uttered a lot, especially when cars were coming at me. The first day, it was a lot of, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. By day 3, though, I told Scott I was a pro. Not professional, but proficient. And there were much fewer expletives coming out of my mouth at that point.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But we like our swearing. You know, we're not normal. We're not normal Minnesotans. Like people here don't punctuate with a lot of swears here. I'm from the East Coast. I grew up in New Hampshire and in New England. Like every other word that people say is a swear. So I've been talking like a truck driver my whole life. And I moved to Minnesota. I remember the first time I swore in front of my prospective mother in law, and she looked like she was going to pass out in shock. My husband's like, maybe you should not have dropped the S bomb in front of my mother the first time you met her. I'm like, okay, all right,
Well,
lesson learned.
my mom was the same way. In fact, we taught our kids that you couldn't say P words around my mom. You couldn't say pee, poop, or puke around my mom, let alone, the S word or the F bomb.
So, how do you communicate those things as a parent if you're not allowed to say those words?
Oh, as a parent, I said it to them. My mother, though,
I'm talking about when you were a kid, though.
oh,
How did
yeah.
you communicate?
When I was little, it was urinate. BM, do you need to have a bowel movement? I can't believe we're talking about this. Welcome to the Politics Chicks, people.
Okay. Um, moving on.
Moving on.
We moving on. All right. So it took me damn near an entire week to edit the first episode of the podcast. I completely underestimated both my skills and the complexity of the programs that we were using. And I also underestimated the fact that I really have no background in this and I didn't understand anything about frame rates and all these other variables. I think the first rough cut that I sent you, we were not synced up. Like our audio and video were completely off, and it was a nightmare. And I got it figured out eventually. And then what it came down to is the platform we were using. So we're trying out a different recording platform today. Hopefully, that's gonna address a lot of the issues, and we will not find me ready to tear my hair out. 14 hours into editing a podcast that should take me 2 hours tops. And it was a lot of learning stuff on the fly. I mean, I just, again, did not anticipate that it was going to be so much. But as with life, everything's unpredictable. And I think when we just program ourselves to accept the fact that there's always going to be debacles, it makes things a little bit easier. We had tech issues today coming into this podcast where it took us 15 minutes to figure out sound. First, I couldn't hear Monica, then she couldn't hear me, then she was too loud in her ears and I wasn't loud enough in my ears, and it was something. So
Life is messy. And while I was gallivanting around London, Christy was tearing her hair out, doing post production on the first podcast. So thanks again
You
for all that
you
hard work.
owe me. You
I
owe
do.
me, woman.
I do. Well, we're both back in Minnesota now. So we're going to try and actually meet up in person now that we're in the same state, including attending the protest, correct?
On Saturday, yes. And I am so excited. And you know why I'm so excited. This is my very first protest. I um up to this point I haven't been able to attend for a couple issues. Back when it was colder and windy, I was dealing with trigeminal neuralgia as a part of my CRPS. So if the wind hit my face, it was like you were at the dentist and they put a pick into a tooth with the cavity. It got your attention. And that just was not going to happen. And I also, at this point, can't walk more than 100 feet or so. So I got a mobility cart from my amazing husband, Tom, for Mother's Day. And I've been practicing, and he has assured me that I'm just as bad of a driver on the cart, the mobility cart, as I am in my car. So at least I know that I'm consistent, if nothing else. Um, but I have that for Saturday, and it has 25 miles on the battery, so we should be good to go. I think when you were there last time at the Capitol, you said it was a good 2 mile walk from where you parked to the
It
protest,
was
right?
for the first on the April 5th protest. That was huge. And we didn't go early enough, and we did have to park 2 miles away. On April 19th, we went much earlier, and that one started as a march farther away. And this one will too. So you should probably be able to go to the Capitol and be fine because the people that are marching will park further away.
Yeah, and I now have a disability parking placard, so
There you
hopefully
go.
that will make parking a little bit easier for my husband and I.
Yep.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, I would be okay if there were no disabled parking spots available, because there were so many people there. I'm willing to drive a little bit, or to scoot a little bit
To scoot.
farther to get there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that sign is going to work on my cart. I might actually just make a sign and put it on the front of my cart. That might be easier. I don't know. We'll
That'll work.
see. I don't know if I can drive and like hold. That'd be awkward, driving and holding at the same time.
Maybe not.
We'll see. Yeah. Yeah, I'm already a bad driver. Tom is gonna give that 2 thumbs down, because we went to Camille's graduation and we had to take an elevator to get to, because I had my cart, because I we had to walk a mile to get to it was at the convention center in Minneapolis. And as I was driving into the elevator, I didn't stop fast enough, and I slammed into the back of the elevator, and like everybody that was on it with us was like, "Oh my god." It's a little embarrassing, but that's just me. It's what I
as
do.
long as as long as you were okay.
We were okay. My cart was okay. My husband was mortified. I was also mortified, but just tried to laugh it off. I mean, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. So I'm just choosing to laugh. It just
I think
makes
maybe you need the student driver sticker like they put on the backs of cars.
ah. Yeah, don't even say that to Tom, because then he'll make me do it, and that would be really embarrassing. So, all right, moving along, Monica, what do we have coming up next?
Well, as we have said before, when it comes down to picking segments for What the Cluck, the possibilities are endless. So, what the cluck?
What the cluck? And has it ever been a fuster cluck? I love that word. I've been waiting all week to use that word. Fuster cluck. It has been a fuster cluck this past weekend. Oh my good God.
Well, and
Um,
leading up to it, we felt like we had some good news, at least some entertainment with the very public breakup between Trump and Musk. That was very popcorn worthy.
oh my God. That article that I wrote, I have not gotten more joy out of I got the most joy out of writing that article about the two of them breaking up. It was fun. It was entertaining. I honestly did have popcorn with milk duds for dinner, because that used to be my favorite show treat. We were all so here for it, right?
It
And
was
I
very
can't help.
interesting to watch that unfold from across the pond, because talking to Europeans about everything in general, they are shocked and appalled, much like many of us here are in the United States. But then I was overseas and watching this very public breakup. It was entertaining.
It was, and it was, it was kind of funny because I was tied to my phone all day because I was like looking for the next update on Twitter and on Truth Social. And every time one popped up, it was like the board, everyone went wild and everyone was reposting. And it was kind of, I hate to say that it was entertaining because this is really a serious situation that we're experiencing, but it was as entertaining as the situation was going to get, I think.
I think it's okay for us to take some joy where we can, because it is a pretty dark situation, and that leads us to our current situation. And it does make you wonder if the current situation is partly to distract from
Yes,
from the
that's what I was
bill,
getting at.
from the public breakup. But of course, now we have uh, protests in, well, not just LA, kind of started in LA, and now they have moved elsewhere. People protesting the really egregious actions of ICE, immigration officials snatching people off the streets, and nothing was out of hand. It was a relatively small protest, and then we have Trump deciding to send in the National Guard against the wishes of both state and local leaders. And we've got some clips to watch. So let's watch this one with the LAPD on horseback subduing a protester. And we're back. And it's hard to even know what to say. The saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that's kind of true. Watching that, we have to let it be known that we don't know what preceded this video, so we don't know what was said on either side. But the optics of
Or
it
what this
certainly,
gentleman had done. I mean, what he did for them to be trying to subdue him.
right.
But
But the optics of it are certainly not good. Regardless of what this protester said or did leading up to it, how he was treated certainly does not paint a picture of protectors.
no.
Certainly looks like aggressors.
No, and I think I was particularly sensitized to this primarily because you shared that video with me. I did not see that one online. So that's one that you had picked. And I was already, I think, pre-sensitized to it because of what we went through here in Minneapolis last week. This all went down before LA, and there were federal law enforcement in Minneapolis. And I think people, I know people got it wrong because it was not purely an immigration operation. Although ICE was there, people assumed that it was ICE raids when actually it was for money laundering and human trafficking and the whole deal. So they actually raided, like they had 8 warrants. So it was kind of a big deal, and it wasn't just Minneapolis. They were in this restaurant had several locations. One of them was in Bloomington. So, but people reacted so not over the top, but so quickly and so with a lot of enthusiasm. I can't think of a better word to describe it. They thought that members of their community were being attacked, and they came out to protect them. And it did not look good. It looked much like what's going on in LA right now, where the law enforcement are not being gentle with how they're dealing with the public. And you know, I don't want to give Tom Homan props, but he has said on more than one occasion that that Americans do have the right to um, protest publicly for now. For now. Um, but it was not pleasant to witness, and it was really actually kind of traumatic to witness, and so was this. Watching those horses, I used to ride. Those are probably 19 hand horses. They are ginormous, and all it would take would be one. The horses are very well trained, but all it would have taken would be one wrong step with those horses, and they could have come down with a hoof on his chest. And a horse weighs 3,000 pounds. You do the math on that. Who's going to win in that fight? So I was not impressed with the fact that they were mounted and doing that to him. I'm surprised that they didn't have unmounted officers come and handle the situation.
Well, I'll go back to the optics of the Minneapolis issue because, again, optics say a lot about the situation. And when you have federal agents coming in looking like they're literally going to war, that is meant to instill fear and to intimidate. And what else is the public supposed to respond?
Yeah. And let's just call a spade a spade. He's pushing the envelope any chances he gets. He is pressing his luck and just hoping that people are going to cede power to him. And that is where we need to understand that he only gets it. This power is all imaginary. It's not real because he has no part of the Constitution that backs him up on any of this shit.
This is a president panicking.
It is. It is. He's afraid, and he understands that he is not as popular as he thinks he is. He's either he's completely deluded right now because he did say in a press conference that this was a very popular move and that LA would be on fire right now if he hadn't done this. I would argue that LA would be in a better place right now if he had not sent federal troops in, because things got much worse on Sunday when people found out that there were going to be National Guard
Well,
called in.
and on that note, if you haven't looked up, if you haven't seen a map of LA, the city, not just the county, but the city, go look at a map of the city and look at the infinitesimally small area that is involved in the protest. It's like 5 square blocks, and LA is huge. It's our second largest city in the country. And the response was not proportional to the actions at all, and very unneeded and unwarranted. And that kind of leads us into our next clip. Christy's going to talk about this Australian reporter who was, as is her duty, reporting on the situation. And let's watch and see what happened.
We'll be right back.
After hours of standing off, this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA. Whoa! You just shut the
You okay?
I'm good.
All right, Christy, this was your pick for What the Cluck, and What the Cluck indeed. What can you tell us about it?
What the Cluck? Watching that video, the first time that I saw it, it was online, so I rewound it a couple times because I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, who was this a mistake? Was this just like someone like, their weapon misfiring, or were they intending to hit someone else? And if you look and zoom in, that officer clearly is aiming at her, taking the careful time to aim directly at her, because there is no one in between them. There's no one in his sight line other than her, and he deliberately shot her. And Monica and I always discuss the clips beforehand just to agree on what we're going to talk about. But I think the thing that I mentioned to her that I wanted to bring up is that this is now a permission structure. Trump has created a permission structure for people who are apt to act on their worst instincts to be given the green light to do that. And I have a lot of dear friends who are in the military. I have a very dear friend who has served multiple tours overseas. We're very good friends with him and his wife. We have friends whose children are in the military right now. One of them is a Marine, the other's in the Navy. And those are people who join the military. And the gentleman that I was telling about originally was eventually went into law enforcement. Those are the type of people who enter law enforcement in the military because their object is public service, that they want to serve this country. They want to serve the citizens of this country. There's another subset of people who do this because they want to be in a position of power. They derive pleasure out of exerting that power over people and dominating them. They derive pleasure out of hurting other people, both physically and emotionally, whether it's through creating a large amount of anxiety and fear for the person that is that they're victimizing. And I cannot help but think that that is the situation that happened here. That is the only assumption that I can make looking at how it happened. And I literally went in and like blew up the screen to see if there was anything in between, and he deliberately saw her, aimed his weapon, and fired at her.
Well, I'll jump in here and remind our listeners that Christy wrote a fabulous article, and it is by far our most read and shared article about reminding the military that their oath is to the Constitution, not to the president. And that's a real risk here, that these people claim that they were just following orders. And I keep saying that in the Nuremberg trials, those people saying that they were following orders was not a valid excuse, and it is not going to be a valid excuse now. So give her article a look if you haven't read it yet.
No, and like you've said multiple times, Monica, what this comes down to is what side of history you are on. And there is no middle ground here. You are either on the right side of history or you are on the wrong side of history. And it's all about choices and making the right choices. And I pray that that people in the military, the men and women who are serving this country, especially Marines, who, by the way, are not trained to be peacekeepers. They are trained to be killing machines. That is their expertise. They go in where no one else wants to. They take the most dangerous missions because they are trained to survive unsurvivable situations, and they are taught to kill quickly and efficiently. That's their training.
The Marines on standby, I think, is a pretty scary prospect because of that very reason. I mean, these, as you said, these people are not peacekeepers. They are trained to kill.
Yeah.
All of that said, though, we do have reason to hope, and sort of on the back of these protests. So we've got our hope in the hen house, and one of our biggest reasons for hope right now is the governor. And I'm going to back up and show you my shirt.
Love it. Love it.
Okay, if you're not watching and you're listening, it says resist, save our national parks, and it has the California bear on it. And I have to say that I bought the shirt before I knew I was going to be living in California, and it just seems very appropriate now. And Christy and I have talked about the fact that Gavin Newsom hasn't always been our favorite leader, but I got to give him props for how he is handling all of this. He was interviewed on Sunday night on NBC, and he did not pull any punches. He called Trump a stone-cold liar, talked about how he had actually spoken to Trump at 1:30 p.m. on Friday, and none of this was part of the discussion. None of sending in the military was part of the discussion. And he's really standing up for his state and for states' rights, and I think that needs to be discussed too, that the right always talks about states' rights until it doesn't meet their wants. And now when they have a blue state, a very blue state, who by themselves would be the fourth largest economy in the world, when they are doing something that they don't approve of, well, then it's all about send in the Marines, send in the National Guard, and quell any dissent. Because this is not about violence. This is about dissent. So hats off to Newsom for standing up and not pulling any punches.
Yeah, and I really we were contemplating showing the video here, but we only have a limited amount of time, if in this podcast first of all, we want to give Trump as little airtime as possible. So we really didn't want to feature him. We featured him in the last podcast because it was kind of necessary to do that because we were talking about the speeches, but we don't want to give him airtime. And also, the majority of people watching this podcast, my guess is they have seen the interview that he did with NBC. And what really impressed me is that Newsom was not holding back. And when asked if he was aware that Tom Homan had suggested that perhaps he might be arrested, his response was what it should have been. Bring it on. You know where to find me. What's holding it up? What's holding you up is the fact that you know it's unconstitutional. So, I mean, the reality that there are active duty troops on the streets of California without the specific request of the governor of the state of California is in itself unconstitutional. So kudos to Newsom for standing up to that. And I think you can kind of, first of all, you can kind of see that Homan knows that he maybe misstepped when he said that over the weekend, because yesterday morning on the news shows, he was walking it back. And when asked if Newsom or Mayor Best had crossed the line. Now, think about that phrase for a second, cross the line. What is the line? What is line? Did they break the law? Did they do or say something unconstitutional? Because we're obviously in a place in time where we are operating outside the bounds of the Constitution. So who's the one deciding what the line is? Really?
It's constantly moving goalposts for sure.
Yes. Yes. And that, I think, is what I find most disturbing. And I think that is part of the plan, because part of the plan is to keep us guessing and keep catching us off guard, to keep us so that the ground under our feet is constantly shifting. I would be willing to bet my life that this whole thing in LA this weekend went down this weekend to distract from what happened last week with Musk and with Trump. And I think a big part of that had to do with the fact that Musk brought up the Epstein files. That was very damaging, and I think that's where a lot of that came from. And they're playing damage control. And Trump is not a brilliant person, but he is good at distraction and smoke and mirrors, and he knows how to dominate the news cycle. And I think that's where this is coming from.
I think there's also an element of Trump knows what is coming up to step on the toes of his big birthday celebration on June 14th, which is his 79th birthday, and the 250th anniversary of the beginning of the U.S. Army, where he's going to have tanks rolling into Washington, D.C. They already are. And, the cost of this celebration is astronomical. And that doesn't even take into account the cost of repairs after it, because Washington, D.C. city streets are not meant to take all of these tanks. So sending in the military in LA may have been meant to intimidate and try and pull back the resistance that is going to be huge for this weekend. But it is having the opposite effect. In the 24 hours after Trump called in the military, the indivisible protests slated to happen on Saturday, June 14th, went up by over 100. So there are now 1,800 protests planned for Saturday. I'll see you there.
Yeah, and that's our second hope in the Hem House. Despite the obvious attempt to intimidate and instill fear by sending in the military, people are stepping up because they realize that the guardrails are gone. The federal guardrails are gone. The government guardrails are gone. The courts are holding for the moment, but in the past week or so, I've seen a couple moments that have made me catch my breath and wonder whether or not this is going to become problematic with judges no longer holding the line. One of my favorite podcasts is The Bulwark podcast that Sarah Longwell does with George Conway. George Conway explains everything to Sarah. And generally it is him explaining law, things that came up in the law for the week, because he still is an attorney. But when this first went down, there was an entire episode where George Conway said, what this is going to come down to is people in the streets. This is literally going to come down to people in the streets. And the air that Donald Trump breathes as the autocrat that he wants to be is reliant on us giving him oxygen. And us giving him oxygen means we allow him to take our sovereignty from us. And, you know, as George Conway said, they can't take it unless we give it to him. What are your
Exactly.
thoughts on that?
Well, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. I like that saying, and I'm going to keep saying it. And we've mentioned it here before that studies show that it takes just 3.5% of a nation's population to participate in peaceful protest to affect meaningful change. The April 5th protests got around 2 to 2.5% based on estimates of attendance. And this coming up one, the No Kings protest on June 14th, is slated to be much larger. So I hope you come out and join a protest if you are able. If you do, a couple of reminders about safety. If you have somebody to go with, do that because there is safety in numbers. If you don't let that keep you from attending. You are going to be amongst like-minded people. Find somebody, say, can I stand shoulder to shoulder with you at this protest? And of course, the first and foremost thing is to remain peaceful. And as we've seen in LA, there's a chance that wherever you are, and unfortunately, it's more likely if you are in a blue state, there might be a presence there that is meant to antagonize and intimidate. And if you meet up with that, do not engage. Do not carry anything that could be perceived as a weapon. And you're going to hear conflicting ideas about what you should wear, what you should do. So do your own research on what you think is best to keep yourself safe. But that first and foremost thing, do not engage in violence. Do not engage with counter protesters. And if law enforcement stops you, you can ask, am I being detained? And if the answer is no, you are free to go. If for some reason you are detained, make sure that somebody knows that you are being taken, have them film it, and do not say anything. Do not say anything except to say that I am invoking my Miranda rights. I will not say anything until an attorney is present. Peaceful protest.
If I can make another suggestion too, I'm one of those people that doesn't know anybody's phone numbers. I fortunately know my husband's phone number, but we're going to be there together. So if we both end up in the pokey, we're going together. I don't know anybody else's phone numbers. What you
No.
may want to do is on a body part, like on your arm, or even write down phone numbers and just keep it in your pocket, because if you are detained, they will take your phone from you. And so if you don't know the phone numbers and they're all in that phone, you won't be able to notify anyone that you're being detained. I've also heard of people setting up groups where one person is the point person and everyone checks in with that person, and texts that one person, and that person they're not at the actual event, and they help organize and kind of keep an eye on where everybody is. And if someone gets into trouble, and they lose a line of communication, then the point person can kind of let the other people in the group know what's going on. So that might be something to consider too, if you have someone who's going to be staying home that day who's willing to serve as a point person. But make sure that you have phone numbers with you, whoever you would call. Most of us probably don't have an attorney on speed dial. I personally don't. And if you do end up becoming arrested, you can request an attorney, at least a temporary attorney, to represent you from the state. They'll appoint someone to represent you until you can retain your own counsel. But it's essential that you have those phone numbers, so at least you can that there are one or two numbers that you can call to at least let someone know where you are, so people don't know that you've been disappeared. Because that is the other thing that we are facing right now. People are being taken and no one knows where they're going. And they have been taking American citizens. Now, with that said, the people that they've taken that are American citizens often are Black and brown people and not Caucasian, which is in itself self-explanatory of what they're doing. They're profiling people when they do detain them. I am worried for these people and the potential issues it could cause for them, even if they are legal and they've got their paperwork, that they could just be detained for days or weeks, and they move you out of state. They keep you in state for as long as necessary to process you, and then they are tending to move people to states like Texas and Louisiana, where the judges are a lot more friendly to do the deportation in a far more expedited manner.
And all these intimidation tactics are all the more reason that we need to come together and protest it. Because, as I said before, the power of the people is greater than the people in the power. And we are the government. We, the people. They are supposed to work for us, and we can't let them intimidate us and beat us down. We have to keep standing up and showing up in greater and greater numbers. So, looking forward to seeing lots of people on Saturday, June 14th. No kings.
Monica, one of our readers came up with a fun idea for Peep Sheeps this week. So why don't you explain that?
All right, Jenny Conan is a subscriber, and she suggested that on our next podcast that Christy and I discuss if we could take 5 people from this regime and send them to Mars on a spaceship, who would it be? And we specifically did not discuss who that would be. So this is going to be off the cuff. And when Jenny recommended this, I said, what, only 5? Can't I send them all? So, okay, 5. Let's go back and forth. Christy, who's your top one?
The Tangerine Tyrant.
100%. Okay, let's go back and forth, and then we won't double up, so that together we get 10. Okay. So you took the top one. Well, obviously my next one is going to be Musk. Let's send him up in his own spaceship for a rapid disassembly.
Right? And at the rate that those spaceships have not been making it through their test launches, Lord knows if it'll make it to Mars. Right? Be a tragedy.
So sad.
So sad.
Okay, who's your number 2?
Stephen Miller.
Yes.
He is a sewer rat.
Yes, indeed.
And I would venture to say he is 100% behind a lot of the rhetoric that is coming out of the White House. He is a snivelly little villain, and he should be in a spacesuit and headed to Mars, in my opinion.
All right, my number 2, as somebody that grew up in South Dakota and is really appalled at the former leadership there, Christy Nome. Send her straight up there. Her cosplaying ass can just go all the way to Mars.
Oh my God. Ice Barbie.
Barbie.
I cannot get over the cosplay. I think that's really, and then I saw Alina Habba was kind of knocking off her gig last week because she was dressed up in ice gear, but I don't want to get off Christy Nome. I actually wrote a really fun article on Christy Nome because we really needed to talk about her. We don't dunk on women very often on this podcast because Monica and I would classify both of us as being feminist. But I had no problem dunking on Christy Nome.
100%.
It was, yeah. That was another one that was fun to write.
Yeah, check out Christy's article. That was another widely read one.
Yeah.
All right, and Christy with a C, who we're not sending to Mars. Who's your number 3?
Yeah, I don't want to go to Mars. I'm not volunteering for that. I would say Carolyn Levitt.
Yes.
She drives me bananas. Fun fact, she grew up in the town next to mine, where I grew up in New Hampshire. She grew up in Atkinson, or it's either Atkinson or Plastow, but they're both attached to my hometown. I grew up in Salem. And she, from the get-go, has been completely unable to contain her emotions and her anger when she's doing her press conferences. That's the first issue that I have with her. She's always underprepared or unprepared. And she just drives me nuts. I mean, I don't know how you feel about her, Monica, but she's very hard to watch as a press secretary.
And the constant lies that come out of her mouth, it's like effortless. She just lies like she breathes, and it's truly appalling. And the cross, yeah. And you and I have both written articles about the so-called Christianity that is being weaponized by this side, and nothing that this side does has any resemblance to any religion, not just Christianity, but any religion around the world.
Yes.
Okay, my number 3. Let's see. We've got Trump, we've got Musk, we've got Levitt, we've got Noam. I'm drawing a blank. What was I going to say? I thought of one.
Pete Hegseth.
That is who I was going to say. That is who I was going to say. Yes. Our Secretary of Defense, the Fox News host that is so woefully unqualified and unfit. And, I love how the Daily Beans calls him Pete Kegseth or Pete Kegstand.
Yeah.
Hell
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely him.
He has awesome hair, though. I think, and literally Trump has commented on that more than once. I did not realize, and Christy Noem has pretty cool hair too. Maybe that's a prereq for being in the cabinet.
He wants people that look good on TV. That's why he has literally 30 former Fox News personalities in his staff. It's just, send that guy straight to Mars.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, your number 4.
My number 4 is RFK Jr.
Oh my God, yes.
He is something. And the reporting that came out today is that he basically canned all the people who make all the recommendations for immunizations in this country because apparently people didn't trust their opinion. Or further on in the reporting, it talked about the fact that the majority of people Biden had himself appointed. So that was kind of also the impetus behind it. But what this clearly is an attempt by RFK to start rewriting policy based on his own ideas about immunization. And after seeing what's happened with children dying from measles, I don't even know what to say. The fact that there are more and more children around in this country walking around without their MMR, that there's been a resurgence of polio. There are cases of polio in the Gaza Strip. I don't think there's been any cases reported in the United States yet, but there have been cases of tuberculosis recorded in the United States, and that's on the rise. And rubella is another issue. The reason that babies are no longer born with the birth defect that happens if a pregnant mother gets rubella is because of the rubella vaccine. And it can cause everything from microcephaly, which is a small brain, to developmental delays, to language processing delays, to death in the fetus. And the reason that did not exist anymore is because rubella was not being spread in this country anymore. And that is going to start happening again. And women are going to start having to deal with children who did not need to have these developmental disabilities and these brain issues because their mother contracted rubella while they were pregnant. So
it's hard to believe that our health department is led by Mr. Brainworm, dead bear, whale skull. It's just also appalling.
The fact that he took his first of all, he went swimming in jeans. Who the fuck goes swimming in jeans? Second of all, he took his grandchildren swimming in a runoff, a sewage runoff where the water is been for years deemed not swimmable. I can't help but harken back to I follow Dr. Beach Gem. Do you follow her? I love her.
No.
She's on YouTube and she's also a big TikToker, but she was talking about hazards for the summer. And the final hazard that she talked about was about this brain-eating amoeba that you can get if you get fresh water up your nose because it lives in warm, untreated water. And it thrives in dirty water. I mean, just knowing that, would you ever let your kids swim in a cesspool? I wouldn't. Or my grandchildren. If it were my grandkids, I'd probably kick my kid's ass for taking them swimming there.
It's all appalling.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 4. I'm gonna go with Tulsi Gabbard, and having just been over in Europe, and the we didn't even talk about Ukraine's big win and how they for 18 months led this campaign that took out a third of Russia's bombers. And did we know about it? No, because we are isolating ourselves so much because Tulsi Gabbard she's a freaking Russian plant. And why is anybody else in the world going to share anything with us? So yeah, send Tulsi straight to the moon.
For sure. And her propensity for Middle Eastern autocrats also, just she's yeah.
All right,
Um
number 5. Who's your 5? I got to think about mine while you're talking.
Number 5. I'm gonna go with Cash fucking Patel. He
Yep.
is. Can we talk about small man syndrome with him? I honestly, I think all of this muscle that, if you look at the tapes from Minneapolis, there are all these muscle bound guys from the FBI. Like all the guys that are in fatigues with the FBI, they're all these super muscular looking flex government operatives. And I truly think that Cash Patel is overcompensating for the fact that he's a short little man. And hey, I'm 4'10", so short little men are still tall to me. So there's always going to be someone my height who's going to dig a short little man, right? But I think he's got little man syndrome. What do you think?
Well, I think the biggest biggest factor is again woefully unfit and unqualified to hold the office that he holds. All of them
Yep.
are unfit and unqualified. Straight
Yep.
to Mars.
Yep. But he's got his own cryptocurrency, cash.
The grift amongst all of them is huge. They are all about enriching themselves.
Oh, 100%.
It's appalling.
100%. Yeah. All right, who's your number 5? We took all the good ones, but
You did take all the good ones.
I'm not. There's still a ton.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to go with Tom Homan.
Yes.
And his actions as the so-called border czar and the head of ICE, he just doesn't care. And you watch him being interviewed, and the interviewer will ask him about separation of families, and he doesn't care. He'll say, well, the family can go with them. So he's going to vanish people off the streets no matter their status, their citizen status, their immigration status, their status in the community. And we're seeing communities ripped apart, which is exactly why Los Angeles is coming to the forefront, because their community is full of immigrants that make their communities better. So Tom Homan, straight to the moon.
Yeah, I have a really hard time listening to him. His communication skills they're terrible. I don't want to focus on that too much because I suspect he probably deals with a speech impediment. Just listening to him talk, my guess was that he probably lisped or had some sort of other speech issue when he was younger. But he has a hard time expressing himself in a way that is collected and makes sense. And he is 100%. He and Stephen Miller, I think particularly the two of them, you can tell that they both eat hatred for lunch. Like that is their sustenance.
The cruelty is the point.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that bothers me the most about him is that the cruelty. He doesn't give a shit.
No.
And as a matter of fact, I think he likes it. And it just that's a sad testament of where we are right now in this country, where we're now having people run the country who are completely absent of compassion and empathy.
100%. That is exactly the reason that we are where we are, and also exactly the reason that there is so much protest against that, because there are more of us that do still have that compassion and that sympathy and that empathy, and that is going to win out 100%.
I believe that. I believe
Yeah.
it. They're fighting against something. We are fighting for something.
100%.
They're fighting to break things down. We're fighting to keep things in place and fortify them and make them stronger. It has to do with heart, and I think we're all doing this with a lot of heart.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of bravery, and I think people are a lot braver than they actually even believe themselves to be.
And I keep saying that it's really easy to break things and tear things down. It's a lot harder to build things back up. And that's what people like us and the protesters, we want to build things up. We want to build people up and raise people up.
Yeah,
So thanks, Jenny, for that suggestion on
that was fun.
that was fun. So if you have a suggestion for another segment for our next podcast, shoot us a message and we'll try and build that in. And that kind of wraps us up, right?
It does.
Closing
It
things out?
does. Yeah. Yeah. Monica, who would have thought 6 months ago we would be sitting here doing this? I didn't.
No. No. And for number 2, it well, it was a lot easier for me. You were the one that did all the hard work. So thanks for that and for coming back for number 2 and doing it all again.
I'm nothing if I'm not stubborn.
You are
And
indeed.
I am very
Yes.
stubborn. I get that from my dad's mom. I will not quit. I'm tenacious. I think that's the only reason that I was able to run 6 marathons is because I'm stubborn and I'm not willing to surrender. I keep plugging at it until I make things work. So,
Well, thanks for your
um,
work on all of it.
yeah, well, it's actually, when I wasn't tearing my hair out, it was actually kind of fun. And I've got some really cool new ideas about, for animated videos, explanation videos that I'm hoping to start putting together,
Cool.
just to kind of be basic explainers. I think there are so many things going around that people have heard before, like posse comitatus and things like that people don't they've heard the word, they probably heard it in passing in history class or in civics class, but they don't know what it really means. So I'm hoping to put together some of those. um, Monica and I are hoping now, once she gets back to California, this week is a little bit rough, but once she's back in California, hopefully we're going to start more hot takes. And if things are going down, we're going to jump on and kind of give commentary on that in between the podcast. So hopefully we'll have a lot more content as far as that goes. We're both still writing. You can look where our aim is to publish every day. Sometimes we don't meet that goal, but as we said in the beginning, life happens.
Life happens. Life is messy.
Life is messy, and we'll keep putting out what we can as much as we can for as long as we can. If you enjoy the content that we're putting out, could you do us the favor of liking, sharing, and commenting, even if it's just a blue heart? Because the more that you interact with our content, the more the algorithm puts it in front of other sets of eyeballs. And that's really the best and easiest way for our work to spread even further. We're so blessed by the number of people that are following us already on Substack. If you had told me we would have that many followers just a couple months into this, I never would have thought that would have happened. I would love to see by this time next year, for us to be close to 50,000 people. Let's kind of let's set that goal, 50,000. We'll have a party. We're going to have a virtual pizza party if we meet 50,000 people. So help us meet that goal. And we can't do it without you. We need you to do that.
So thanks for being here with us. And be sure to join us next week. We have Jen Farrell. She will be on talking about her work as a teacher and a theater director and the unique safe space it provides for marginalized kids, especially those who are members of the LGBTQ community. And we thought that was appropriate for June and for Pride Month. And so this is a friend of Christy, so thanks for setting that back up.
I'm super excited to interview her. And please follow us on our socials. We are on Substack, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, where you just look up the Politics and Chicks and you'll find us. I think that's it, Monica. I think we made it through our second episode in one piece. How awesome is that? We did it.
I'll be back in California for the next one. And thanks again for joining us, and keep shining your light so we can find each other in the dark.
And remember that we're stronger together.
Absolutely.
Thanks, folks. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.